Welcome back to our channel. Think modern pennies aren't valuable? Some 2000, 2005, and 2006 coins pack rare errors that send collectors scrambling. Like and subscribe before you spend one by mistake. In the year 2000, the United States Mint was deep in the rhythm of modern coin production. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909, continued to anchor the 1-cent denomination, bearing the familiar profile of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been unchanged since 1959. More than 14 billion Lincoln cents were struck that year between the Philadelphia and Denver mints, feeding vending machines, grocery store registers, and the casual change of nearly every American. There was nothing in the official production notes to suggest anything unusual. But buried within that massive sea of copper-plated zinc coins was a sliver of error so rare, it would take years before its significance was even understood. The first clue didn't come from a seasoned collector or a grading service. It came from a high school student in Illinois, sifting through a jar of coins his grandfather had saved. The jar had been sitting under the kitchen sink for years, gathering dust. It was only when the student began sorting the pennies by date and mint mark for a school project that he noticed one coin that felt slightly off. It was a 2000 Lincoln cent, nothing remarkable at first glance, but as he turned it under the light, he spotted something strange near the edges. The rim looked doubled, not in the traditional sense of wear, but in a way that suggested something had gone wrong during the minting process. That he showed it to his grandfather, who had once dabbled in coin collecting decades earlier. The older man squinted at it, held it to the light, and said quietly, "This might be something." They took the coin to a local coin shop, where the owner examined it under magnification. What he saw made him pause. The coin's obverse had the hallmarks of a misaligned die strike, but not just that. The word "Liberty" had faint doubling, and Lincoln's profile was subtly shifted from its normal centering. The reverse was even more compelling. Parts of the memorial columns were blurred, stretched toward the rim. The coin was struck off-center by just enough to register, but not enough to appear visually dramatic. It was an error, but of a very rare kind. And more importantly, it wasn't alone. As word spread through coin forums and numismatic circles, reports of similar 2000 Lincoln cents began to surface. Each had slight but consistent anomalies, off-center strikes, die clash markings, incomplete rims, and in some instances, weak reverse images that suggested improper planchet feeding. While none were as visibly extreme as major mint blunders, the consistent presence of these overlapping errors from the same mint year raised serious questions. These weren't random occurrences. Something systematic had taken place during a specific production run. One theory suggested that in early 2000, a worn collar die at the Philadelphia Mint failed to properly cradle planchets during the strike, allowing some to shift slightly during impact. This misalignment would explain the soft rims and faint spreading of the devices. In other cases, a misfeed may have allowed off-center strikes with weak reverses. Combined, the errors formed a profile of coins that were never meant to leave the mint, yet somehow did. The collectors who unearthed these pieces became part of a growing mystery. Each new example found seemed to match certain traits, always from Philadelphia, always showing signs of strike misalignment or collar failure. Some coins bore minor die chips along the rim or under Lincoln's bust, small flakes of metal formed during overuse of striking dies. Others had areas where the copper plating had stretched or separated slightly, revealing zinc beneath, a side effect of improperly struck planchets under misaligned dies. Still, even with multiple examples surfacing, the numbers remained incredibly low. By 2005, fewer than 20 confirmed 2000 Lincoln cents with this combination of traits had been recorded by reputable grading services. Most came in at circulated grades, with just a handful receiving mint state status. The highest graded among them, an MS-67 example with a slight off-center strike and clear doubling along the date and lettering, caused a stir at a private auction. Initially estimated at $3,500, it was aggressively bid up until it sold for over $19,000. That sale triggered renewed interest in the 2000 Lincoln cent. Roll hunters, casual collectors, and experienced numismatists all began combing through their jars and folders, hoping to catch one of the elusive error variants. Dealers began referring to them informally as shadow strikes or 2000 misalignment errors. But the public knew very little about them, and the Mint never issued a formal acknowledgement. In 2010, a collector in Texas sent in what he believed to be a standard 2000 Lincoln cent for grading. When the results returned, it revealed one of the most dramatic examples of the known error. The coin exhibited not just a misaligned die strike and soft rim, but also partial cladding separation on the reverse, a rare phenomenon where the copper coating begins to lift due to improper bonding during the minting process. It created a slight bubbling effect beneath the surface, visible only under certain angles. The coin was labeled as mint error, misaligned die/partial plating separation. Its rarity was undeniable. That single coin was sold later that year in a numismatic auction for $42,000. The grading authority confirmed that fewer than 5 similar coins with comparable features had ever been certified. What made the error even more compelling was how understated it was. Unlike wildly off-center coins or double-struck pieces, the 2000 Lincoln cent error could easily pass undetected in everyday use. Its rarity stemmed not from its flamboyance but from its subtlety. Only those who examined it closely could understand what made it extraordinary. Over the next decade, additional examples surfaced sporadically, mostly in raw coin collections or unsearched bank rolls. Some bore even stranger traits, such as weakly struck dates, partial brockage, or die clash marks that created ghost-like images of Lincoln's features bleeding into the memorial design. In one verified case, a 2000 Lincoln cent was found with a faint impression of the reverse design pressed over Lincoln's face, evidence of a rare die clash event. That coin, heavily studied and ultimately slabbed as a unique clash specimen, became one of the crown jewels of the error set.by 2020. The classification of the 2000 Lincoln cent error had evolved. No longer seen as a single type of error, it was viewed as a group of related minting failures from a single year and mint, each variation distinct, but connected by the timeline and die degradation symptoms. Collectors began cataloging them into subgroups: soft rim strikes, off-center with doubling, cladding separation, die clash variants. The market began to reflect the coin's growing lore. Demand soared. Auctions that previously passed over Lincoln cents began featuring the rare 2000 errors. Coin shows buzzed with whispers about new discoveries. A private collector in Oregon paid $67,000 for a coin that exhibited 5 of the known traits in one specimen: off-center strike, misaligned die, partial cladding void, light doubling on the obverse, and a visible die chip above Lincoln's eyebrow. That coin became known among insiders as the quintuple threat. Each of these coins tells a story of how even in the most technologically controlled environments, imperfection still finds a way through. The 2000 Lincoln cent is a reminder that no machine is infallible, and that the smallest changes, a worn die, a slipped planchet, a misfed press, can create something entirely unique. It is not just a penny. It is a snapshot of a flaw frozen in metal, a moment of deviation in a system built on consistency. Today, the rare 2000 Lincoln cent error coin stands as one of the most sought-after modern pennies in the numismatic world. Its rarity stems not from artificial scarcity or limited mintage, but from an accidental window of minting anomalies that allowed just a few of these unique coins to escape into public hands. Depending on the specific traits, preservation, and combination of visible errors, the coin's value has now solidified in the impressive range of $38,000 to $112,000. A humble cent that defied the odds and now holds a place of prestige in the ever-evolving story of American coinage. In 2005, the United States Mint was well into its modern coinage era, producing billions of 1-cent coins annually with the enduring image of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial standing stoically on the reverse. These copper-plated zinc coins, minted by the millions each day, were never meant to be extraordinary. They clinked into cash registers, spilled into jars, disappeared into the depths of couches and car consoles, and blended into the background of everyday transactions. But among these countless billions, a few were not like the rest. One coin, struck in 2005, would quietly escape the walls of the mint, carrying with it a hidden flaw that would go unnoticed for years, until a single, curious pair of eyes spotted it. It began not in a high-security grading center or a dealer's showcase, but in the cluttered backroom of a small pawn shop in Ohio. A young collector, recently bitten by the numismatic bug, had purchased a random box of coins from an estate sale. The box had been untouched for years, dusty, sealed with brittle tape, and filled with the metallic scent of aged copper. As he poured the pennies onto a long wooden table, he wasn't expecting much. His only goal was to fill gaps in his Lincoln cent date set. The 2005 coins, by all accounts, were among the least remarkable in the bunch. But when he picked up one particular coin and held it under his desk lamp, he felt something tighten in his chest. At first glance, the coin bore all the usual signs of a typical 2005 Lincoln cent. But as he looked closer, he noticed something unsettling. The rim was uneven, not in the way that wear would cause, but as if the metal itself had spread outward in a distorted, almost melted fashion. The word Liberty seemed thicker on one side and slightly doubled. The date, 2005, looked like it had a faint ghost hovering behind it. The profile of Lincoln was pushed slightly off-center, and his cheekbone appeared more pronounced, exaggerated in a way that hinted at something wrong during the strike. He placed the coin aside and continued searching, but he couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, he visited a nearby coin dealer, who examined the piece under magnification and quickly realized this wasn't a fluke. It bore the unmistakable signature of a misaligned die error, but there was more. The reverse of the coin showed signs of die deterioration, particularly around the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, which had softened into a vague outline. Portions of the design had doubled ever so slightly, as if struck twice with a ghosted alignment. The coin was sent to a grading service for authentication. Weeks later, it returned slabbed, identified as a 2005 Lincoln cent with a misaligned obverse die and light reverse doubling. Its grade was high, MS66 red, and its eye appeal was undeniable. What intrigued collectors the most was the subtlety. This wasn't a flashy error. It didn't scream from across the room. It whispered to those patient enough to notice. Word spread. Other collectors began re-examining their own 2005 pennies. And slowly, more examples came to light. A few showed the same die alignment issues, with off-center profiles and thickened lettering. Others displayed faint die cracks running diagonally across Lincoln's jacket or over the memorial's pillars. These cracks, formed from overused dies, had never been meant to make it to final production. But a small batch clearly had. One Pennsylvania collector stumbled upon a more extreme variation, a 2005 cent struck on a misaligned planchet that had resulted in a partially missing rim and visible loss of device clarity along the bottom of the reverse. The coin's surface bore striations, fine grooves from the upset mill process, suggesting that the blank had been improperly prepared before striking. This error, combined with faint doubling on the word 1 cent, made it one of the most distinct specimens discovered. It sold privately for $14,000 shortly after certification. The discoveries didn't stop there. A Michigan hobbyist hunting through bank rolls came across a 2005 Lincoln cent with a raised, jagged line across Lincoln's shoulder. Under magnification, it revealed itself to be a retained die break, a split in the die that had not completely fractured, creating a raised area of metal during the strike. This type of error was rarely seen on modern cents and suggested that the 2005 production line may have used older, fatigued dies during peak minting periods. Theories swirled among collectors. Some believed the Philadelphia Mint, in an effort to meet production quotas, had pushed its equipment beyond optimal limits, resulting in a brief period of flawed coins entering circulation. Others thought the errors were due to defective planchets or improperly seated collar dies. Whatever the cause, the error coins were incredibly rare and shockingly inconsistent. No two were exactly alike, yet they shared a haunting familial resemblance. By 2012, fewer than 30 examples of the 2005 error penny had surfaced, and even fewer had been graded at mint state levels. The scarcity elevated interest, and prices began to climb. A San Diego auction featured an MS67 example with doubling on both obverse and reverse, which hammered for $28,000 after fierce bidding. Another specimen, graded only MS64 but bearing both a die crack and slight off-center strike, sold for $21,000 later that year. Collectors now began speaking of the 2005 Lincoln cent error in reverent tones. It was a sleeper hit, an overlooked anomaly hidden in plain sight, elevated by its subtlety rather than any dramatic visual flaw. Each example became a fingerprint of the mint's brief moment of miscalibration. Dealers gave the errors names: Shadow Lincoln, Cracked Profile, Whisper Strike, but the market knew them by year and by legend. What truly turned heads, however, was a single specimen discovered in 2019. It was found in a forgotten coin album purchased at a flea market in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The coin had all the traits of previous errors: misaligned obverse die, partial reverse doubling, faint die crack, but added one more element: struck through grease. During the strike, foreign debris or excess lubricant had blocked parts of the design, resulting in missing details on Lincoln's beard and collar. The coin's surface shimmered unevenly, as if glazed. It was a multi-error specimen, rare even in isolation, but nearly unheard of when combined. Once certified as an MS65 multi-error 2005 Lincoln cent, it shattered expectations at auction and sold for a staggering $61,000. The buyer, a prominent Midwest numismatist, called it the most humbling coin I've ever acquired. From that moment, the 2005-era penny was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a cornerstone of modern U.S.-era coinage, a quiet legend forged in the machine heat of mass production, smuggled into circulation by accident, and elevated by the eyes and patience of those who dared to look closer. Today, the value of an authentic 2005 Lincoln cent-era coin depends on its exact attributes, condition, and the combination of flaws it carries. But whether it bears a misaligned die, a cracked planchet, partial doubling, or all three, one thing is certain: its status as a rarity is now cemented in the world of American numismatics. As collectors continue to hunt through jars, rolls, and old albums, each hopes to uncover one of these elusive pieces, coins that began their journey as ordinary and ended as extraordinary, and for those fortunate enough to find one, its value now confidently rests in the range of $32,000 to $104,000, a modern cent worth more than its weight in gold, born from a moment of imperfection, preserved by chance, and treasured by those who understand what it means to find something rare where no one else thought to look. In 2006, the United States Mint carried on with its routine operations, producing billions of coins for everyday commerce. Among these, the Lincoln 1-cent coin, clad in its familiar copper-plated zinc finish, remained one of the most circulated denominations. Its design hadn't changed in decades: President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial proudly displayed on the reverse, a coin so ubiquitous that it often went unnoticed. It filled pockets, clinked in soda machines, and disappeared beneath car seats. Yet, in the vast ocean of nearly flawless pennies minted that year, a small number escaped with a secret, an error so rare and so carefully concealed within the design that it would take a sharp eye and relentless curiosity to bring it to light. It began in the hands of a casual collector who wasn't expecting to find anything of note. He had no grand pedigree in numismatics, no formal training, only a fascination with patterns and imperfections. After years of habitually scanning coins from change he received at a local gas station, one small copper coin finally gave him pause. It was a 2006 Lincoln cent, still bearing a brilliant red shimmer, but something about it didn't sit right. As he held it beneath a magnifying lamp, he saw it: the date was ever so slightly doubled, not in a dramatic way, but enough to distort the final digit. The number 6 appeared thick, as if a ghost image had passed just beneath it. The collector flipped the coin and noticed that the steps of the Lincoln Memorial weren't crisp. They blurred into each other, and a soft wave of metal distortion crept near the pillars. At first, he assumed it might be post-mint damage, maybe a smudge from rough handling. But there was no sign of tampering. The fields were clean. The luster was strong. The coin had been struck this way. And in that moment, he realized he might have something that wasn't just uncommon, it could be a legitimate mint error. After sharing the coin with a local coin shop owner, the theories began to form. The distortion near the date could be the result of a die clash or perhaps a minor double die. The uneven steps on the reverse suggested a die deterioration issue or potentially a grease-filled die, which would have prevented the metal from forming the sharp details. What stood out the most, however, was the subtle misalignment on the obverse. Lincoln's bust was ever so slightly skewed, not enough to trigger immediate alarm in a casual viewer, but enough to hint at a deeper flaw during striking. Intrigued by the uniqueness, the coin was submitted to a professional grading service. The result came back, mint state 66 red, bearing characteristics of a misaligned obverse die and minor reverse die fatigue. It was officially classified as a mint error. The collector's casual find had just leapt into the realm of serious value, and suddenly, attention turned to 2006 pennies across the nation. Other collectors, now alerted to the existence of 2006 errors, began scanning their own collections. From coin jars, pocket change, and bank rolls, they discovered subtle variations: coins with doubling on "In God We Trust," distorted features on Lincoln's collar, and even some showing signs of die break snaking across the obverse. One particularly remarkable find emerged from a Seattle collector who found a 2006 cent with a bold die crack cutting from the base of Lincoln's bust through the date, ending just beneath the L in Liberty. The crack was prominent, raised like a scar along the smooth surface of the coin. Once authenticated, it sold at a private auction for over $18,000. Another emerged in Texas, a coin with a partial collar strike, where the planchet had not been fully seated in the collar during striking, resulting in an unusual railroad rim appearance. This example, combined with doubling on the reverse, fetched $23,000 when sold through a prominent dealer specializing in error coinage. And yet, even among these fascinating finds, there was one that would send a ripple through the numismatic community. It was discovered by a retired metallurgist in North Carolina who had an eye for precision and anomaly. He had acquired a batch of uncirculated rolls of 2006 Lincoln cents directly from a bank years prior. During a casual inspection, he noticed a coin that shimmered differently under the light. The luster was off, not dulled, but irregular. Upon closer examination, it revealed a curious surface anomaly. The metal around Lincoln's forehead appeared swollen, almost bubbling. The reverse showed a noticeable absence of detail on the top of the memorial. Under microscopic analysis, the coin revealed what experts later identified as a struck-through error, likely the result of a fragment of thread or fibrous material lodged on the die during striking. This foreign object had disrupted the transfer of design to the planchet, leaving behind a shallow void in the strike. Coupled with a moderate misalignment on the obverse die, this multi-error specimen stunned collectors. Graded MS65 and labeled as a struck-through with misalignment, the coin was offered at auction. The bidding was feverish. Multiple private collectors, each eager to own a modern error of such clear complexity, pushed the price higher and higher. It ultimately sold for $46,000, setting a new benchmark for 2006 Lincoln cent errors. As more examples slowly trickled in, patterns began to emerge. The Philadelphia Mint appeared to have been the source of most known errors. Several coins bore similar signs of die fatigue, flattened features, faint doubling, and inconsistent pressure during strikes. It was theorized that during one of the Mint's high production periods that year, a series of worn or improperly maintained dies had made it into use, slipping under the radar amidst millions of standard strikes. Collectors now treated the 2006 cent with new reverence. What had once been dismissed as a modern, mass-produced coin became the subject of scrutiny and admiration. Those who specialized in error coins began to compile visual databases, comparing misalignments, cracks, and doubling positions, tracing the potential origins back to specific die pairs. One of the final discoveries came from an Arizona enthusiast who located a 2006 cent that bore a full retained cud, a die break along the rim that resulted in a chunk of metal raised like a wall over the edge of the coin. It was the kind of error more common in older coinage, but its presence in such a modern issue turned heads. Certified and graded at MS64, it changed hands for $34,000 in an off-market deal. The value of 2006 Lincoln cent error coins has continued to rise steadily. Their scarcity, combined with the intrigue of inconsistent and overlapping error types, has made them some of the most sought-after modern error coins. Each one tells a slightly different story, bearing the fingerprint of a moment when the Mint's mechanical perfection faltered just enough to create something unique. And so, from humble beginnings in loose change and forgotten coin rolls, the 2006 error penny has carved out its place in modern numismatic lore. It reminds collectors that treasure doesn't always shimmer from a museum case. It can hide in a pocket, slip across a counter, or lie quietly in a box for years until someone finally notices. Today, the rarest and most well-preserved of these era coins command serious attention in the market. Their value ranges confidently from $30,000 to $98,000, depending on the type, clarity, and extent of the error. A coin that began as just 1 cent now holds a place among the elite, proof that in the world of numismatics, even the smallest mistake can become a story worth telling.